Hi guys, we're going to continue reading some more of the Chocolate Touch. When we stopped last time, John Midas was walking along to school and ran into a boy named Spider Wilson who wasn't nice. He kind of liked to pick on him. But John was chewing on his glove and his glove kept turning to chocolate. So he was eating his glove. It's kind of weird. So it says, John gulped down a large piece of the second glove's palm and looked pleased. What's the matter? Spider demanded. Do your people make you eat leather? This is special leather, John replied. He licked his lips and sighed contentedly. It turns into chocolate as soon as you put it into your mouth. Look, John bit off the glove's little finger, took it out of his mouth. Now it's chocolate. He put it back into his mouth and gulped it down. Give me a piece, Spider said. And here's a picture of John Midas, and he's got the glove in his hand, and he's walking along eating it. And there's Spider Wilson, who's the bigger boy, and he's trying to figure out why John is eating a leather glove. So John says, why should I? They're my gloves. Hand over a piece, Spider said. Do I eat your gloves? John asked reasonably, his mouth full of chocolate. Why should you eat mine? Those aren't real gloves, Spider said. Whenever one person has candy, he has to share it with the others. That's the club rule. What club? John asked. Never mind what club, Spider said, but you'd better let me have some of that chocolate. Without waiting longer, Spider snatched what was left of the second glove. John was too surprised to resist, and he didn't want to anyhow. He had a feeling that he had had enough chocolate for a while. He was getting a bit thirsty. Spider ran only a little way ahead. When he saw that John wasn't going to fight to get the glove back, he started to eat his prize. He stuffed the leather into his mouth and took a big bite. Spider stopped short in his tracks. He frowned, bit deep into the leather again. Disgusting! It tasted worse than just leather. It tasted like leather with which a boy had made mud pies and snowballs and patted old dogs. John thought perhaps he might be getting late for school, so he started running. He left Spider Wilson spitting the soggy remains of the glove into the gutter. Still giggling to himself about the defeat of the enemy, John walked between the great stone pillars at the entrance to the school grounds. He had gone no more than halfway to the main building when he heard Susan Buttercup calling him. She was standing near the jungle gym with some of her friends. I've got something to show you, John, she shouted. As she came running to meet him, he could see that she was waving something in her hand that flashed as it caught the rays of the sun. It was a silver dollar. It's a birthday present, she explained, showing him the dollar. Isn't it beautiful? The sight of such wealth made John forget the triumphs of his own day. It's a good present, he said. Are you sure it's made of silver, though? I once got a whole bag of gold coins in a Christmas stocking, only they were chocolate coins covered with gold paper. Of course it's real, silly, Susan said. My daddy said so. You can feel it if you don't believe me. She handed him the coin. John looked at the coin suspiciously. All right, Susan said, bite it if you think it isn't real. Go on and bite it. John felt rather silly. I can see it's real now. I don't have to bite it. But I want you to, Susan insisted. You weren't sure. Well, make sure. That's what they always do on television. When a cowboy wants to make sure a dollar's real, he bites it. John put the dollar about halfway into his mouth and reluctantly bit into it. His teeth went right through the coin. The part that had passed between his lips was hard, but sweet chocolate. Susan could hardly believe her eyes. She had given John a complete circle of silver. He sadly handed back a crescent. John didn't know what to say. Susan couldn't speak. Tears trickled down her cheeks like rain down a window pane. She looked at the piece of dollar in her hand. She looked up at John, whose face was red with embarrassment. John Midas, Susan blurted, I hate you. She turned and ran away before John could think of anything at all to say. No. Chapter 5. John hung up his coat, got his notebook and pencil out of his locker, and sat down at his small table, just in time for the second bell, when Mrs. Plimsoll walked silently into the classroom. As soon as she appeared in the doorway, all the chattering and scuffling stopped. The 20 boys and girls sat straight in their chairs and looked straight ahead at the clean blackboard. "Good morning, children," Miss Plimsoll said. "Good morning, Miss Plimsoll," the class answered respectfully. Miss Plimsoll sat at her high desk, blinking her eyes as she surveyed the room. Then she opened a little drawer in her desk and pulled out a spectacles case, from which she took out her reading glasses. She removed her long-distance glasses, put on her short-distance glasses, snapped shut the spectacles case, and replaced it in the drawer. Shut the drawer, tilted her head so that she could look over the glasses on her nose, and said, "This morning, children, we are going to have an important test." There were some groans and a few uhs and ahs. Miss Plimsoll lifted up one of her hands, and silence was restored instantly. "No complaining, please," she said sternly. "This test will show me how well you have been learning your arithmetic this year. It will be a short one. I'm going to write just 4 problems on the board. I shall expect you to solve them all swiftly and accurately, and to write your answers neatly. You will place your paper in front of you now. You will write your name at the top right-hand corner, and then you will place your pencil beside your paper. Sit back in your chair and wait until I give the signal to begin your work." Miss Plimsoll turned to the blackboard and began chalking up the test problems. Tests always made John nervous. Besides, his lips were feeling dry and the taste of chocolate was strong in his mouth. He raised his hand. "Yes, John?" Miss Plimsoll asked. "Please, may I go and get a drink of water? Please, Miss Plimsoll?" he asked in a small voice. "Very well. Hurry back. We're going to start in a few minutes." John gratefully slipped out of the room and walked quickly down the quiet corridor to a water fountain. His tongue felt thick with chocolate. The cold water would be refreshing. He pressed his foot down on the fountain treadle, and a stream of clear, ice-cold water spurted up from the silver nozzle in the white enamel basin. He lowered his head until the jet of water reached his lips. The cold water splashed delightfully against the outside of his mouth. He opened his lips. As soon as the water gushed in, it turned into ice-cold chocolate water, thin and sweet. Quickly stopping the flow, John looked with dismay at the shallow puddle that had formed and was now draining away in the basin of the fountain. He hurried to another fountain on the second floor of the building. But there the same thing happened. The clear, ice-cold water turned to liquid chocolate in his mouth. When John finally got back to his classroom, all the other pupils were bent over their tables, busily scratching away. Miss Plimsoll looked up from her book as John tiptoed in. She looked at the clock on the wall, looked back at him, and wagged her finger reprovingly. John began on the first of the 4 problems, but he was so worried about the chocolate water that he couldn't keep his mind on his work. By the time he was ready to start the 4th problem, the other boys and girls were already putting down their pencils and straightening up and smiling at each other. 2 minutes to go, said Miss Plimsoll. Concentrating hard, John took the end of his pencil between his teeth and began to nibble it. It immediately turned to chocolate. Then he noticed an even more disturbing change. Although he had taken the pencil out of his mouth as soon as the first piece of chocolate had crumbled off, the pencil was continuing to change to chocolate. The chocolate was slowly, but steadily, moving down the pencil, replacing the wood and the lead inside, changing it into a chocolate pencil before John's very eyes. The magic, for John now knew that his power must be magic, was apparently getting stronger. By the time the whole pencil had changed from red, yellow, and black to dark brown, Miss Plimsoll was announcing that only a few seconds remained in which to write down the final answer. Here's a picture of John in his classroom, Mrs. Plimsoll is sitting at her desk with the math problems, and the other students are sitting at their seats, and John's raising his hand. He's got a problem. Oh no. Let's see what happens. Just a minute, John pleaded. Shh, Miss Plimsoll cautioned him, holding a finger up to her mouth. Shh, chorused the slow workers, who were becoming almost as excited as John. But John felt worst of all. He felt sure he could finish the problem and write down the correct answer if only he had something to write with. But Miss Plimsoll, he begged in a loud whisper, my pencil's turned to chocolate. Hush, John, Miss Plimsoll said. I'll speak to you after the bell. John tried to write with his changed pencil, but the point was too soft, and he only succeeded in making a chocolate smear where he should have written 72. When the others had been excused to go out for mid-morning play, John had to go and stand by Miss Plimsoll's desk. John, Miss Plimsoll said, you mustn't make up silly stories to excuse your failures. I must have the truth. What did you do with your pencil? This is it, John said, showing Miss Plimsoll the pointed stick of chocolate. Really it is. It's changed. What do you mean it's changed? Miss Plimsoll demanded. That's my pencil, John tried to explain, only it isn't the same anymore. Nothing stays the same today if I put it into my mouth. The same thing happened when I chewed my gloves. They were chocolate too. John, Miss Plimsoll said slowly, do you feel all right? Yes, thank you, John said. I feel all right, except I'm getting so thirsty. The water from the water fountain turned to chocolate, and so did the water upstairs. I would like a drink of cold water. Yes, John, Miss Plimsoll said. She suddenly looked pale. You run out and play with the others. I'm going to have a talk with the nurse. And John, Miss Plimsoll said as he started toward the classroom door, here's another pencil. Be a good boy and try not to lose it. I'm afraid I'll have to keep this piece of chocolate until school's out. You know we don't allow anyone in class to eat candy. Miss Plimsoll put the slightly chewed chocolate pencil in her desk drawer, and John went out to look for Susan. He found her skipping rope with 2 girls in his class. John usually scorned skipping rope. He preferred hide and seek, tag, FBI, and spies, kick the can, or any other good, exciting game. Jumping up and down in one place, just to avoid being hit by a rope, seemed silly to him. But he was sorry for having spoiled Susan's silver dollar, and he was willing to make a sacrifice. Susan, he said. Susan continued to bounce on one foot as her 2 friends swung the rope, over and under, over and under, over and under her. She didn't seem to notice John. I'll skip with you, he offered. Susan stopped and the rope was caught by her shins. Let's try doubles, backwards, she said, but not to John. She ignored John. You go first, Betty. Ellen, you go second. I'll go last. The one who does it the most times gets the first slice of my birthday cake. Susan looked at John, raised her eyebrows, shut her eyes, and stuck out the tip of her pink tongue. Then she turned back to the girls and smiled. Ellen whispered in Betty's ear, and Betty whispered in Susan's ear. Then all 3 of them looked at John and each other again and burst out laughing. Oh no, Susan's not being very nice to John, is she? Oh, Susan, John protested. I didn't mean to do it. The trouble is, there's something magic about me today. Everything I put into my mouth turns to chocolate. The girls giggled. You wouldn't like it, John said, who was beginning to feel sorrier for himself than he'd ever felt before. I think it's getting worse. At first, just the part in my mouth turned to chocolate. But when I nibbled the end of my pencil, the whole pencil changed. Pooh, Susan said. The others hooted with glee. Maybe I'll get sick and die, John warned. Maybe I'll turn to chocolate myself. Then you'll be sorry. I don't believe one word about the chocolate, Susan said. And if it was true, you'd be glad because all you ever like eating is chocolate. We're going to pause there, guys, and we'll see if John's able to sort it out with Susan. Okay? Bye.